The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like this before. Representatives from 237 civilizations packed the massive crystal amphitheater on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of panic that echoed off the gleaming walls. Admiral Zexhai of the Carillion Republic slammed his four-armed form against the podium, his mandibles clicking frantically. "Silence! Silence!" His voice boomed through the translation matrix, cutting through the chaos like a plasma blade. The great hall fell quiet, but the tension remained thick enough to cut with a molecular knife. "The situation is worse than we initially reported," Zexhai continued, his usually composed demeanor cracking. "Our long-range scouts have confirmed it. The Devourer fleet isn't just moving toward the Outer Rim territories anymore." A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The Devourers, a machine intelligence that had already consumed 3 entire spiral arms of distant galaxies, were the stuff of nightmares. They didn't negotiate. They didn't retreat. They simply arrived, stripped worlds bare of all matter, and moved on, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. "How long do we have?" The question came from Ambassador Thyril, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into dancing rainbows of fear. 18 standard months, Zexhai replied, his voice hollow. "Maybe less." The silence that followed was deafening. 18 months to prepare for an enemy that had never been defeated. An enemy that turned entire star systems into raw materials for their ever-expanding fleets. "What are our options?" asked General Vax of the hegemony, his reptilian features twisted with concern. "We've run the calculations," Zexhai said, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The 3-dimensional map showed the approaching Devourer fleet, a swarm of geometric nightmares that stretched across several light years. "Every civilization must contribute their entire military fleet. We're looking at approximately 40,000 ships." 40,000. Senator Quillnox's gaseous form shimmered with agitation. "That's every warship from every member world." "It's the only chance we have," Zexhai confirmed. "The combined firepower might, and I stress might, be enough to stop them at the Barrier Nebula. It's a natural choke point. If we can't stop them there..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened to worlds the Devourers reached. The voting began immediately. One by one, each civilization pledged their fleets. The Carillions would send 800 ships. The hegemony contributed 1,000. The Crystal Dominion offered 600 of their most advanced vessels. As the tally climbed toward the projected 40,000, a soft chime indicated a new communication request. The chamber's main display flickered, showing an incoming transmission. "From Sol System." "Ah, yes," Zexhai muttered, checking his notes. "The humans. They're one of our newer members. Joined about 50 years ago, I believe." The human representative appeared on screen, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes wearing a simple blue uniform. She looked remarkably calm for someone whose species was about to face extinction. "Ambassador Chen," Zexhai greeted her formally. "We're in the final stages of fleet coordination. Earth's military contribution has been calculated at approximately 200 ships. When can we expect them to depart for the staging area?" Ambassador Chen was quiet for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Admiral Zexhai, I need to clarify something. Humanity will not be sending 200 ships." A murmur of concern rippled through the assembly. Was Earth backing out? Were the humans abandoning the Alliance in their darkest hour? "How many ships are you sending?" Zexhai asked, his mandibles twitching with barely contained frustration. "1. The word hit the chamber like a physical blow. For several long seconds nobody spoke. The human's image remained steady on the screen, her face showing no sign of jest or madness. "I'm sorry," Zexhai said slowly. "Did you say 1? "That's correct. 1 ship." The explosion of outrage was immediate and overwhelming. Representatives leaped to their feet, their translation matrices working overtime to convert thousands of simultaneous expressions of disbelief, anger, and betrayal into something approaching coherence. "This is madness," roared General Vax. "The humans are abandoning us." "Typical newcomer species," hissed Senator Quillnox. "No understanding of galactic responsibility. Cowards." shouted someone from the back. Zexhai raised all four arms for silence, his face a mask of controlled fury. Ambassador Chen, I must ask you to reconsider. The survival of every living being in this galaxy depends on our united response. Surely, Earth can spare more than a single vessel. Chen's expression remained unchanged. Admiral, I understand your concern, but I want to be very clear about something. When I said we're sending one ship, I didn't say we were sending our only ship. The chamber fell quiet again, but this time the silence carried a different quality, confusion rather than outrage. I don't understand, Zexhai admitted. We're not sending one ship because it's all we have, Chen explained patiently. We're sending one ship because it's all we need. The words hung in the air like a challenge to physics itself. One ship, against a fleet that had consumed galaxies. The idea was so absurd that several representatives began what could only be described as nervous laughter. Ambassador, Zexhai said carefully, are you perhaps unwell? Chen's mouth curved into what humans called a smile, but there was something unsettling about it, something that made several of the more predatory species in the assembly unconsciously lean back in their seats. Admiral, let me ask you something. In all your research on the Devourers and all your tactical analyses, have you ever wondered why they've never encountered humans before? Well, your species is relatively young and you're located in a sparse region of the galaxy. It's not surprising that... That's not what I meant, Chen interrupted quietly. Have you ever wondered why, in their conquest of 3 spiral arms, across millions of worlds and thousands of different species, the Devourers have never encountered anyone like us? The question sent an odd chill through the chamber. There was something in the human's tone that suggested depths beneath depths, secrets wrapped in implications. What are you saying? Zexhai asked. I'm saying, Admiral, that there's a reason Earth has only been part of your galactic community for 50 years, despite achieving faster-than-light travel over 2 centuries ago. The chamber was now so quiet that the hum of the life support system seemed loud as thunder. We've been busy. And with that simple statement, Ambassador Chen's image flickered and disappeared, leaving behind 236 civilizations staring at a blank screen and wondering what exactly they had just heard. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Dark 3. Weeks after the council session, long-range sensors across the galaxy began picking up something impossible. Captain Velox of the hegemony scout ship Talon's Edge was the first to report it. Her vessel, positioned at the edge of the barrier nebula where the combined fleet was assembling, detected a massive energy signature moving through the dark between stars. Control, this is Talon's Edge, she transmitted, her reptilian voice tight with confusion. I'm reading a single contact approaching the staging area. Classification, unknown. Size estimate, came the reply from Fleet Command. Velox stared at her sensors, running the scan 3 more times before answering. Control, contact measures approximately 15 kilometers in length. That can't be right. Repeat, Talon's Edge, 15 kilometers. It's bigger than our largest dreadnoughts. A pause. Are you certain this is a single vessel? Velox looked at her tactical officer, a young Carillion whose mandibles were clicking nervously. Confirmed, Control. Single vessel, but the energy output. Control. This thing is putting out more power than half our assembled fleet. Impossible. Run a full diagnostic on your sensors. But as Talon's Edge ran its diagnostics, 47 other ships in the area began reporting the same contact. A massive single vessel, moving with purpose toward the barrier nebula, radiating energy levels that defied belief. When Admiral Zexhai received the reports aboard his flagship, the Inevitable Victory, he found himself staring at tactical displays that his mind refused to accept. Sir, his aide, Commander Thys, reported with obvious bewilderment, we're receiving a communication from the unknown vessel. They're requesting permission to dock. Dock? Zexhai's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. That ship is the size of a small moon. What do they expect to dock with? They've specified your flagship, sir. That's impossible. The Inevitable Victory isn't designed to accommodate. His words were cut off as every screen in the command center activated simultaneously, showing the image of a human male wearing what appeared to be a simple black uniform with no visible rank insignia. "Admiral Zexhai," the human said, his voice carrying an odd accent that the translation matrix couldn't quite place. "I'm Captain Morrison of the Earthship Vindication. I understand you have some questions." "Captain Morrison," Zexhai began, trying to maintain some semblance of protocol while his worldview crumbled around him. "Your vessel appears to be unusually large for a single ship." Morrison nodded. "She's a bit of a monster, yes. We'll need to use the cargo base for the briefing. I'm sending over a shuttle with some of my senior staff." "Briefing? About the Devourers. You're going to want to hear this." Before Zexhai could respond, Morrison continued. "Oh, and Admiral, you might want to have all the fleet commanders present. This is going to change how you think about this entire war." The EDR transmission ended, leaving Zexhai staring at a blank screen for the second time in 3 weeks. 2 hours later, the largest cargo bay of the inevitable victory had been hastily converted into a conference room. Representatives from every major fleet in the Alliance were present, either in person or via hologram. The atmosphere was tense, confused, and more than a little hostile. The human shuttle that docked was unremarkable, a simple, angular craft that looked almost primitive compared to the sleek vessels of other species. But when its occupants stepped out, something in the bay's atmosphere seemed to shift. Captain Morrison was a tall, lean human with graying hair and scars that suggested considerable combat experience. But it was the woman beside him who drew the most attention. She wore the same black uniform, but where Morrison looked like a career military officer, she looked like something altogether more dangerous. "Gentlemen, ladies, and honored beings," Morrison began, his voice carrying easily across the massive space. "Thank you for accommodating us. I know this is unusual." "Unusual?" General Vax interrupted, his reptilian form bristling with indignation. "Captain, you arrive with a ship that shouldn't exist, make impossible claims, and then expect us to—" "General." The woman beside Morrison spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but carrying a quality that made everyone in the bay fall silent. "Before you continue, you should know that we've been tracking Devourer movements for the past 73 years. The statement hit the assembly like a physical blow. "That's impossible," Admiral Zexhai said. "The Devourers only entered this galaxy 18 months ago." Morrison and the woman exchanged a glance that spoke of shared knowledge and terrible secrets. "Admiral," Morrison said gently, "the Devourers didn't enter this galaxy 18 months ago. They've been here for over a century." The cargo bay erupted in chaos. Shouts of disbelief, demands for proof, accusations of madness filled the air. But gradually, as Morrison began to speak, the voices died away. They didn't announce themselves because they never do. The Devourers don't attack immediately when they arrive in a new galaxy. They scout. They probe. They study. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the bay. 73 years ago, human deep space monitoring stations detected anomalous signals from the galactic rim. We investigated. The hologram showed a star map with dozens of red markers, scattered across what should have been inhabited systems. These were the first signs. Entire civilizations gone. Not destroyed in war, not wiped out by plague or natural disaster. Simply gone, as if they had never existed. "Why didn't you report this to the council?" demanded Senator Quillnox. Woman beside Morrison stepped forward. "Because we weren't members of your council yet, and because we had our own priorities." "Which were?" Zexhai asked, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Morrison's expression grew grim. "Learning how to kill them." A chill settled over the assembly that had nothing to do with the bay's environmental systems. "You see," Morrison continued, "while you've been living in peace, building trade networks and forming alliances, humanity has been fighting a shadow war. Every deep space patrol, every exploration mission, every research expedition, they've all been hunting Devourers. The hologram shifted, showing a series of tactical displays that made the assembled military commanders lean forward despite themselves. We've had 73 years to study them, to understand their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. And you found weaknesses? General Vax asked, his hostility replaced by desperate hope. The woman smiled, and the expression was as cold as the void between stars. Oh yes, we found their weaknesses. But first, Morrison added, we had to find them. Do you know how hard it is to track an enemy that can disguise itself as empty space? That can mask its energy signatures to look like background radiation? He gestured to the hologram, which now showed the location of every human fleet patrol for the past 7 decades. The pattern was clear, a methodical, relentless sweep of the galaxy's edge. We've been mapping them, hunting them, fighting them in battles that never appeared on any official record, perfecting techniques that no other species has ever needed to develop. How many? Zexhai asked quietly. How many what? How many have you killed? Morrison and the woman exchanged another of those meaningful glances. Admiral, the woman said, in the 73 years since we first encountered the Devourers, human forces have engaged them in over 4,000 separate actions. We've destroyed approximately 12,000 individual Devourer units. The numbers hung in the air like a challenge to sanity itself. 12,000? Senator Quillnox's gaseous form shimmered with shock. The thing about fighting an enemy, for 73 years, Morrison said, his voice taking on a harder edge, is that you get very, very good at it. General Vax leaned forward, his predator's instincts recognizing something familiar in the human's demeanor. What exactly are you saying? Morrison's smile was sharp as a blade. I'm saying, General, that the 40,000 ships you've assembled here represent the largest military force your civilizations have ever put together. It's impressive. It's unprecedented. He paused, letting the compliment settle before delivering the blow. It's also about 1/10 the size of the Devourer fleet that's heading this way. The cargo bay fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the sound of dozens of beings trying to process information that redefined their understanding of the universe. But here's the thing, the woman added, her voice cutting through the silence like a laser. Size isn't everything. Sometimes when you're fighting something bigger than you, being smaller means being faster, being smarter, being more dangerous. She gestured toward the bay's viewports where the massive bulk of the human ship, Vindication, could be seen in the distance. That ship contains technology that doesn't exist anywhere else in this galaxy. Weapons that we've spent 7 decades perfecting. Tactics that we've refined through thousands of battles. One ship against a fleet that conquered 3 spiral arms? Admiral Zexhai's voice was barely above a whisper. Morrison nodded. One ship. But Admiral, you're thinking about this wrong. You're thinking like prey. The word hit the assembly like a slap. You're planning to gather your forces, make a stand, and hope that your combined firepower will be enough. That's what prey does when cornered. And what do predators do? General Vax asked, though his voice suggested he was beginning to understand. The woman's smile was terrifying in its simplicity. Predators hunt, and with that, the humans presented their plan. Chapter 3. The Predator's Gambit. The human plan was insane. At least that was the consensus among the assembled fleet commanders as they stared at the tactical displays that Morrison and his companion, who had introduced herself only as Commander Sarah, had laid out before them. You want to do what? Admiral Zexhai's voice carried the particular tone of someone trying very hard not to panic. It's quite simple, Morrison replied patiently. Instead of waiting for the Devourers to reach the barrier nebula, we intercept them in deep space. Hit them while they're in transit formation. With one ship. General Vax's claws scraped against the metal floor. Captain, I've reviewed your tactical data. The Devourer fleet consists of over 400,000 individual units. Even if your claims about their technology are accurate, they are. Commander Sarah interrupted quietly. You're still talking about facing odds of 400,000 to 1. Morrison nodded. Those are good odds. Good odds? Senator Quillnox's gaseous form flickered with agitation. Captain, perhaps human mathematics work differently than— Senator, Sarah said, her voice taking on a tone that made several of the more experienced military officers in the room straighten unconsciously. Let me ask you something. In all your studies of military history, have you ever encountered a force that achieved victory despite being outnumbered 400,000 to 1? Of course not. Such a thing is impossible. Exactly. Sarah's smile was predatory. It's impossible, which means the Devourers won't expect it. The logic was so circular it made heads spin, but something in the way the humans spoke suggested they weren't engaging in wishful thinking. Walk us through it, Admiral Zexhai said finally. Explain how one ship accomplishes what 40,000 cannot. Morrison activated a new holographic display. This one showed the Devourer fleet in detail, a massive swarm of geometric shapes, moving through space in what appeared to be a complex formation. The first thing you need to understand about the Devourers, he began, is that they're not just a military force. They're a processing operation. Everything they do, every tactic, every formation, every decision, is optimized for consumption and conversion of matter. The hologram zoomed in on different sections of the fleet, highlighting various ship types. These larger units, resource processors, they break down planetary matter into useful components. These smaller ones, scouts and harvesters, they identify targets and strip away defenses. And these, General Vax pointed to a cluster of particularly large, ominous-looking vessels at the fleet's center. Command and control nodes, Sarah answered. The Devourers aren't individually intelligent, they're more like cells in a larger organism. Those ships coordinate the entire operation. Morrison nodded. Which brings us to their weakness. The same efficiency that makes them unstoppable also makes them predictable. They've conquered 3 spiral arms using the exact same tactics every time. How do you know their tactics? Demanded Admiral Zexhai. Because, Sarah said, we've fought them before, many times. She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show a series of battle recordings. The assembled commanders watched in stunned silence as human ships, vessels they had never seen before, using weapons they couldn't identify, engaged small groups of Devourers in running battles across empty space. Every engagement taught us something new, Morrison explained. Their response patterns, their weapon capabilities, their limitations. Limitations? General Vax leaned forward. What limitations? Sarah's expression grew cold. They can't adapt. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Explain, Zexhai demanded. The Devourers are perfect at what they do, Morrison said. But perfection, it turns out, is also a weakness. They've been using the same tactics for millions of years. They've never needed to adapt because nothing has ever challenged them effectively. Until now, Sarah added. The hologram shifted again, showing a detailed schematic of the human ship Vindication. The assembled beings stared at a vessel that looked nothing like any ship they had ever seen. Where their vessels were sleek and elegant, the human ship was angular and brutal. Where their designs emphasized efficiency and beauty, the human ship looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that war was ugly and planned accordingly. 15 kilometers long, Morrison said with evident pride. Crew of 47,000, built in a shipyard that officially doesn't exist, using technology that officially hasn't been developed. What kind of weapons does it carry? General Vax asked, his predator's instincts recognizing a fellow hunter. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. The kind that work. Before anyone could ask for clarification, she activated another display. This one showed weapon specifications that made the assembled military commanders lean forward despite themselves. Quantum destabilizers, dimensional shear cannons, temporal displacement mines. Sarah rattled off the list like she was ordering lunch. And a few other things that we've been saving for a special occasion. Temporal displacement? Senator Quillnox's voice rose an octave. That's theoretical technology. Not anymore, Morrison said quietly. Admiral Zexhai felt a chill run down his spine. What exactly have you humans been doing for the past 73 years? Morrison and Sarah exchanged another of their meaningful glances. Preparing for war, Morrison said simply. But your species just achieved interstellar flight, protested Commander Thiss. Your technology level, our public technology level, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. The implications of that statement sank in slowly. The humans had been members of the Galactic Council for 50 years, participating in trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic summits, all while secretly developing weapons that made the Council's most advanced military technology look like stone knives. Why? Zexhai asked. Why hide your capabilities? Morrison's expression grew somber. Because we knew this day would come. We knew that eventually, the Devourers would turn their attention to this galaxy, and we knew that when they did, the rest of you wouldn't be ready. So you prepared alone, General Vax observed. For 73 years. We prepared, Sarah confirmed. We built ships that could fight them. We developed weapons that could hurt them. We trained crews that could outthink them. And now? Zexhai asked. Morrison gestured toward the viewports, where the bulk of the Vindication dominated the starfield. Now we hunt. The tactical display shifted one final time, showing the projected intercept course. The human ship would leave the safety of the fleet, travel deep into empty space, and engage the entire Devourer armada alone. This is suicide, Admiral Zexhai said flatly. No, Sarah replied, her voice carrying absolute certainty. This is war. And what do we do? General Vax asked. What role does the combined fleet play in this insane plan? Morrison's smile was grim. You wait, and if we fail, you run. Run where? Demanded Senator Quillnox. If the Devourers aren't stopped, they will be stopped, Sarah interrupted, her voice carrying a finality that brooked no argument. How can you be so certain? The human woman turned to face the assembled representatives, and for a moment, something flickered in her eyes that made several of the more perceptive beings step back unconsciously. Because, she said quietly, we're not just hunting the Devourers. She paused, letting the words sink in. We're hunting to extinction. Bartender Chapter 4. The hunt begins. The Vindication. Departed from the fleet staging area at 800 Standard Time, accelerating into the dark between stars with a silence that seemed somehow ominous. No fanfare, no ceremonial send-off, no speeches about duty and sacrifice. The massive ship simply turned away from the assembled fleets and disappeared into the void, leaving behind 40,000 vessels and their crews to wait. And wonder. Admiral Zexhai stood on the bridge of the inevitable victory, staring at the empty space where the human ship had been. His tactical officer, Commander Thiss, approached with a datapad that trembled slightly in his grip. Sir, long-range sensors are tracking the human vessel. Current course and speed put them on an intercept heading with the Devourer fleet. Time to contact? Approximately 14 hours at their current acceleration rate. Zexhai nodded, though his mind was struggling to process what he had witnessed over the past few days. The humans' casual revelations had shattered everything. He thought he knew about galactic politics, military capability, and the nature of the threat they faced. Sir? Theiss's voice carried a note of confusion. There's something else. The human ship. It's not showing up properly on our sensors anymore. Zexhai turned. Explain. It's still there, but the signature is fading. As if they're somehow masking their presence. Before Zexhai could respond, his communication console activated. The image of General Vax appeared, the reptilian commander's expression grim. Admiral, are you seeing this? The sensor anomaly? Yes. It's not just us. Every ship in the fleet is reporting the same thing. The human vessel is becoming progressively harder to track. Zexhai felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's environmental systems. Contact the humans. I want to speak with Captain Morrison. Sir, his communications officer reported after several minutes. We're unable to establish contact. They're not responding to any transmissions. Are they still there? Unknown, sir. Our sensors show nothing. Empty space. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Somewhere in the dark between stars, a 15-kilometer ship carrying 47,000 human souls had simply vanished. They didn't abandon us, General Vax said quietly over the comlink, though his voice suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. No, Admiral Zexhai agreed, staring into the starfield where the Vindication had disappeared. They're hunting. 12 hours later, deep in the void between star systems, something impossible was happening. The Devourer fleet moved through space in perfect formation, 400,000 vessels strong, their geometric hulls reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. They had been traveling for months, moving with the patient inevitability of a natural disaster. At the center of the formation, the command nodes pulsed with data streams that connected every ship in the armada. The collective intelligence that controlled the fleet processed information with mechanical efficiency, calculating optimal resource allocation, target prioritization, and consumption strategies. They had detected the primitive alliance forming at the Barrier Nebula weeks ago. The response had been cataloged, analyzed, and dismissed. 40,000 ships represented a significant local force, but the Devourers had faced similar resistance before. The outcome was inevitable. What they had not detected was the single ship that now paralleled their course, invisible to their sensors, matching their speed exactly. The Vindication ran silent, its hull coated with metamaterials that bent electromagnetic radiation around its structure like water around a stone. Every system that could emit a detectable signature had been powered down or shielded. The massive ship had become a ghost, a 15-kilometer phantom keeping pace with its prey. On the bridge, Captain Morrison stood before a tactical display that showed the Devourer formation in perfect detail. His crew worked with the quiet efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Range to target? Morrison asked quietly. Optimal firing distance in 6 minutes, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Park. All weapon systems are green and ready. Engineering? Quantum destabilizers are charged and synchronized, came the reply from Chief Engineer Santos. Dimensional shear cannons are online. Temporal displacement mines are armed and ready for deployment. Morrison nodded, his gaze never leaving the tactical display. Around him, the bridge crew prepared to engage an enemy that had never been successfully challenged using weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Commander Sarah to the bridge, Morrison said into his comm unit. She arrived moments later, her black uniform pristine despite the tension that filled the ship like electricity. Status? Ready on all fronts. The question is whether our intelligence is accurate. Sarah's smile was cold as vacuum. It's accurate. 73 years of combat data doesn't lie. And if we're wrong, then 47,000 humans die, doing what humans do best, which is making sure the other bastard dies first. Morrison couldn't help but smile at that. It was, he reflected, a very human way to approach an impossible situation. All stations, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. We are now at battle stations. In approximately 4 minutes, we will engage the Devourer fleet. Every one of you knows what's at stake. Not just for humanity, but for every living being in this galaxy. He paused, looking around the bridge at faces that showed determination rather than fear. We've trained for this. We've prepared for this. We've spent 73 years learning how to kill these things. His voice hardened. Today we find out if we learned well enough. The countdown on the tactical display reached 0. All weapons, Morrison ordered, his voice carrying across the bridge with absolute authority. Fire. The Vindication opened, fire with everything it had. Quantum destabilizers lanced out across space, invisible beams that struck the Devourer formation and began tearing apart the fundamental bonds that held matter together. Where they hit, ships simply dissolved, their perfectly geometric hulls coming apart at the molecular level. Dimensional shear cannons carved holes in space itself, creating rifts that swallowed entire sections of the enemy fleet. Ships that had survived the destruction of solar systems were pulled into dimensional voids and crushed out of existence. Temporal displacement mines materialized throughout the formation, each one creating a localized time distortion that aged anything within its field by centuries in the span of seconds. Devourer vessels that had endured for millions of years crumbled to dust as time itself became a weapon. The effect was devastating. In the space of 30 seconds, the Vindication had destroyed over 3,000 enemy ships, but the Devourer fleet consisted of 400,000 vessels. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire armada turned toward the source of the attack, weapon systems that could sterilize planets focusing on the single human ship that had dared to challenge them. Energy beams that could crack continents struck the Vindication's shields. Projectile weapons that fired relativistic slugs hammered against her hull. Exotic weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy unleashed forces that could rearrange matter at the quantum level. The human ship shuddered under the assault, her shields flaring and buckling as forces beyond imagination tried to tear her apart. "Shields at 60% and falling," reported Lieutenant Commander Park. "Hull breaches on decks 12 through 16, called out damage control. Quantum destabilizers are offline. Dimensional shear cannons have lost primary power." Morrison watched the tactical display as the Devourer fleet began to envelop his ship, 400,000 predators converging on a single target. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. Had they miscalculated? Had 73 years of preparation not been enough? Then Commander Sarah stepped up beside him, her expression calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. "All units have taken the bait." Morrison felt his doubt evaporate, replaced by something that might have been anticipation. "Excellent. Signal the fleet." "What fleet?" asked Lieutenant Commander Park, confusion evident in her voice. Sarah's smile was terrifying in its simplicity. "The real fleet." And then, all around the Devourer armada, space began to ripple. Ships materialized out of nothingness, not the sleek, elegant vessels of the Galactic Council, but angular, brutal human warships that looked like they had been designed by people who understood that survival was more important than aesthetics. Hundreds of them, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Each one had been hiding in dimensional fold space, invisible to sensors, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Vindication had never been intended to fight the Devourer fleet alone. She had been bait, drawing the enemy into the perfect position for ambush. "This is Admiral Rodriguez aboard the Retribution," came a transmission that filled the Vindication's bridge. "All units, execute Protocol 7. Show these things what humans." Due to extinction-level threats, the human fleet opened fire. 73 years of technological development, perfected through thousands of battles, was unleashed in a coordinated assault that turned space itself into a weapon. Quantum torpedoes that could destabilize matter at the subatomic level streaked through the void. Gravity bombs created localized singularities that pulled entire sections of the Devourer fleet into crushing embrace. Energy weapons that existed only in theoretical physics textbooks carved through armor that had withstood the fires of dying stars. But it wasn't just the weapons that made the difference. It was the tactics, where the Devourers moved in perfect formation optimized for efficiency. The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves. They struck from multiple angles, concentrated fire on command nodes, created chaos where the enemy expected order. The Devourers tried to adapt, tried to reform their lines and respond to the unexpected assault. But adaptation takes time, and time was something they no longer had. "Target the command nodes." Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled across the tactical network. "Cut off their coordination." Human ships dove through the Devourer formation like sharks through a school of fish, their weapons seeking out the control vessels that held the enemy fleet together. One by one, the command nodes exploded in brilliant flashes that left entire sections of the armada dead in space. Without coordination, the Devourers began to falter. Ships that had moved with perfect synchronization started colliding with each other. Weapon systems fired on their own vessels. The efficiency that had made them unstoppable became a weakness as their own perfection turned against them. Phase 2 complete, Commander Sarah reported, her voice carrying across the Vindication's bridge despite the chaos of battle. Enemy coordination is compromised. Beginning Phase 3. Morrison nodded, watching as the tactical display showed the Devourer fleet fragmenting into smaller groups. All units execute containment protocol. Don't let any of them escape. What happened next was less a battle than an execution. Human ships surrounded each fragment of the enemy fleet, creating overlapping fields of fire that nothing could escape. The Devourers fought back with desperate fury, unleashing weapons that could shatter moons, but it was too late. They had been outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and overwhelmed by an enemy they had never bothered to understand. Ship after ship disappeared. In brilliant explosions, the geometric perfection of Devourer technology was torn apart by human weapons that cared nothing for elegance or efficiency, only for results. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Park reported, her voice filled with awe. "We're reading massive casualties in the enemy fleet. Estimate 90% destruction." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "And the remaining 10%? Scattered and fleeing in all directions, no longer a cohesive threat. Let them run." Admiral Rodriguez's voice came over the comm. "Let them carry word back to whatever spawned them. Let them know that this galaxy is protected." Commander Sarah stepped up beside Morrison, her expression finally showing something that might have been satisfaction. 73 years, she said quietly. Was it worth it? Ask the trillion beings in this galaxy who will wake up tomorrow because of what we did today. Morrison nodded, understanding. The human fleet had sacrificed decades of normal development, had lived in secret and prepared for war while their neighbors built art and poetry and dreams of peace. But that sacrifice had saved everything. "Signal the Galactic Council fleet," Morrison ordered. "Tell them the threat has been neutralized." "And tell them what exactly?" asked Lieutenant Commander Park. "That we've been lying to them for 50 years. That we've had the capability to field this kind of fleet all along." Morrison considered the question, then shrugged. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that sometimes, to protect peace, someone has to be ready for war." The aftermath of the battle was almost more shocking than the battle itself. Admiral Zexhai stood in the same cargo bay where the humans had first revealed their plan. But now it was filled with representatives from the human fleet. Dozens of ships had docked with various vessels in the Council Armada, their crews meeting their galactic neighbors for the first time. What struck Zexhai most was how normal they seemed. These were the same humans who had just annihilated a threat that had conquered 3 spiral arms, but they looked like ordinary people. They talked about their families, showed pictures of their children, complained about the food in their ship's mess halls. "I don't understand," he said to Captain Morrison, who was giving him a tour of the Vindication's less classified sections. "You've had this capability for decades. You could have revealed yourselves at any time, taken a leadership role in the Council, demanded territory, resources, recognition." Morrison paused at an observation window that showed the debris field where the Devourer fleet had died. "Admiral, what do you think would have happened if we had announced ourselves 50 years ago? If we had shown up with ships like this, weapons like these?" Zexhai considered the question. There would have been fear, suspicion. Some civilizations might have tried to form alliances against you." "Exactly. We would have become the threat. Instead of uniting the galaxy against the Devourers, we would have divided it against ourselves." "So you waited. We waited. We watched. We prepared. And when the real threat arrived, we were ready." They walked in silence for a while, passing through corridors that hummed with technology decades ahead of anything the Council possessed. Finally, Zexhai voiced the question that had been troubling him since the battle ended. "What happens now?" Morrison stopped walking and turned to face him. "What do you mean?" "You've revealed your capabilities. The secret is out. Every civilization in the galaxy now knows that humanity possesses technology and military power that dwarfs their own. How do we move forward from here?" Morrison's expression grew thoughtful. "Admiral, let me ask you something. Do you feel threatened by us?" The question caught Zexhai off guard. He considered it carefully, examining his own emotions. Fear? Yes, there was some of that. Awe? Certainly. But threat? No, he said finally. I don't think I do. Why not? Because... Zexai paused, trying to put his feelings into words. Because you could have dominated us at any time, but you chose not to. You could have conquered the galaxy, but instead you protected it. Morrison nodded. That's the difference between us and the Devourers, Admiral. They consumed because it was efficient. We fought because it was necessary. And now that the fight is over, now we go home. We resume our lives. We continue to be members of the Galactic Council, contributing to trade and culture and the advancement of civilization. But you'll still be watching. Morrison's smile was slight, but unmistakable. We'll still be watching, because that's what we've learned to do. We watch for threats. We prepare for dangers that others can't see coming. And when necessary, we act. He gestured toward the debris field outside the window. The universe is a dangerous place, Admiral. It's full of things that want to consume or conquer or destroy everything we've built. Most civilizations respond to that reality by building walls, forming alliances, hoping that cooperation will be enough. And humans? Humans become very, very good at killing the things that threaten what we protect. Epilogue. The new reality. 6 months later. Ambassador Chen sat in her office on Earth, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The integration of human military technology into the Galactic Council's defense networks was proceeding smoothly, though not without complications. Some civilizations had requested access to human weapons technology. Others had demanded explanations for decades of deception. A few had proposed that humanity take a leadership role in galactic defense, while others worried about the implications of such concentrated power. Through it all, the human response had been consistent. They would share what they could, explain what they must, and continue to do what they had always done. Watch for threats and prepare to meet them. Her door chimed and Admiral Rodriguez entered. The commander of the human fleet looked tired but satisfied, the weight of command evident in the lines around his eyes. The council session went well? Chen asked. Better than expected. The Carillions have agreed to joint patrol duties in the Outer Rim. The hegemony wants to establish a joint research program for defensive technologies. And the others? Rodriguez shrugged. They're adapting. It's what civilizations do when their understanding of the universe changes overnight. Chen nodded, turning to look out her window at the bustling cityscape below. Somewhere out there, in shipyards that officially didn't exist, new vessels were being constructed. Updated designs that incorporated lessons learned from the Devourer. War, as historians were already calling it. Any regrets, she asked, about the secrecy? About keeping our capabilities hidden for so long? Yes. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. I think about it sometimes. All the civilizations we could have helped over the years. All the threats we could have stopped sooner if we had revealed ourselves. But then I remember that the Devourers weren't the first extinction-level threat in this galaxy, and they won't be the last. The universe has a way of producing things that want to end civilization, and when the next one comes, we'll be ready. Chen smiled, because that's what humans do. That's what humans do. Outside the window, the sun was setting over a world that had spent 73 years preparing for war, while the galaxy built monuments to peace. It was a peculiar kind of success, but it was success nonetheless. In the depths of space, human patrol ships continued their eternal vigil, watching for signs of new threats, new challenges, new tests of civilization's will to survive. They moved, unseen through the dark between stars, ghosts in the void, shepherds protecting a flock that didn't always know it needed protection. And if anyone had asked them why they did it, why they took on that burden while others lived in peace, the answer would have been simple, because someone had to, because that's what humans do. The end.